Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Bethesda Sabbath Fellowship, here to give you another message on what's going on in the world. I'm trying to not to give you a disparate message, one that's biblical and matches up with what you're seeing. The problem is the world is disparate right now. The world is bizarre right now. What we're seeing is nihilism, consuming nihilism, and you'll see nihilism wars very shortly here. You're going to see a generation of covert narcissists attack covert narcissists. It's going to be a mess. This all matches up with what our series is, which is the philosophy of the end of days, the philosophy of eschatology. What you need to know, your reality, your existence. Why were you born for such a time as this? And why do you feel like staying off social media for the rest of your life because it's just that bad? So, what I'm saying is that God is preparing us for the biggest bully ever to be seen, which is the Antichrist. And we'll get through the false prophet too, but in the meantime, he's sending us these little covert narcissists now, these little bullies, and we need to stand up. If we practice the politics of appeasement, they will consume us too, because we're not standing for righteousness. So the Bible works, everything else doesn't work, it all fails. Polly, her name is Amazing Polly on YouTube, says, live by PC, die by PC. And we'll see that happening now. My comment on that is kowtow to bullies and you die 1,000 deaths. So in the Bible, God doesn't want his people to appease the bullies. He doesn't want them to drag them in, all the mediums, all the idol worshippers, like King Solomon. Hey, let's bring in all of these idols, let's build them temples, and let's go worship them. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. You can't die that 1,000 deaths and yet 1,000 wives. So what if you're the first to appease and then they take you down and stomp on your liberal career first? That's what's going to happen. The mayor of Seattle is going to fall down. That's Jenny Durkin. You're going to see the governor get nailed by these people too because they're going to kiss their boots time and time again, die 1,000 deaths, and they'll take their careers down too. The mayor of Chicago is going to fall at some point in time. Jacob Frey in Minneapolis is going to fall. We're all waiting for the Antichrist. And basically what you're going to see is that the fake leftists, really, they're interested in their own career. And so they're pretending to be leftists, or they're pretending to be whatever it is. And so BLM is going to take them down one career at a time. And so if you look at the actual statistics, well, first let's make the one statement that you want to hear, which is that George Floyd didn't deserve to die. I don't care if he had a bad background or anything like that. He didn't deserve to die, not that day. But here's the problem. The statistics prove that it's mostly whites being shot, not blacks. And it's very rare, especially now since cops are afraid to even touch a black person. So, we're all waiting for the Antichrist. And in the meantime, the problem is iron isn't mixing with clay. And we're going to go through that today. That's from Daniel 2, 43, 44. So this is from a gentleman by the name of Russ Dizdar. And he's saying that there's going to be a black awakening. It's going to be a time of the rise of the satanic super soldier. I'm calling them little covert narcissists, and you'll see the nihilistic wars. So they're going to be selfish, bratty. They live at home with their parents, and they're going to go out and try to intimidate us and hurt us. And they're well funded. George Soros and other parties are funding them and are creating these little wars. So it's all satanic. Okay, and there's a process that we're going to go through. So let's look at this as a philosopher would look at this. So one other party that's involved in this is the Catholic Church. There are some very wonderful Catholic bishops, and this is one of them. This is Vigano, and he's the one that's been warning us that there are some Satanists in the Vatican, and there are some child molesters and things like that. And he's saying, he wrote a letter to President Trump and said, the children of darkness, whom we may easily identify with the deep state, which you wisely oppose and which is fiercely waging war against you in these days, that you'll see the virus will fade, but then there's another pandemic waiting, and there are civil disturbances that are just waiting to occur. And so they're just looking for a time and a place to occur. So this is all unjustified aggression against the population. And so if you're for BLM, then whose life doesn't matter? So, obviously you've elevated black lives above the other lives, so you're saying the other lives don't matter. And obviously the Bible doesn't matter because you're elevating one group above another group based on color. Okay. Remember Are covert narcissist videos? Yes, I've done a bunch of narcissist videos, and especially the covert ones. I'm claiming that the Antichrist will be the greatest covert narcissist ever. He will become more of an overt narcissist when he's finally exposed as being the Antichrist, but in the meantime, you're not going to know who he is. Just like right now, you don't know who the Antichrist is. We all have an idea of who the false prophet is, but he's being very covert too. He's making little changes right now. In the meantime, there are satanic super soldiers out there in major cities, and they're being funded and being told where to go and what to do. So you're going to see people with psychopathic traits, more likely to ignore lockdown restrictions. Yep, that's a typical thing. The law abiders are going to abide by the laws, but the narcissists, they aren't going to abide by any laws, and they're going to put on their masks, which is what they're doing. Narcissists wear masks, and demons do too. Keep that in mind. And they're going to go out and attack. And then I have a picture on the bottom of this Raz guy that happens to be a Simeonite. Yeah, he's biblical. I'm going to show that too. So in the meantime, this is an article that says there's a dark triad of these narcissists. There's Machiavellianism, which is part of the dark triad. And so what we're looking for is that these people are in the spectrum of narcissism and psychopathy, and they're going to be coming and attacking against you because they're little selfish brats, and they need to move back home with their parents, so their parents don't want them either. I'm going to tell you that you will see covert narcissist versus covert narcissist, snowflake versus snowflake. The nihilist wars are going to be horrific as we try to cope with these covert narcissists that just are everywhere in society right now. They're raging. We are paying for the protests. We're paying for their fires, looting, and death. There was a bill handed from the city of Minneapolis towards the state of Minnesota for $500 billion, I think it was. Yeah, 500 billion. And so I don't want to pay for that. I live in Minnesota, and I don't think anybody wants to pay for that. Why didn't we stop these riots? I don't mind protests. Protests are fine. You know, peaceful protests are wonderful, actually, but we're going to be paying for all of this for a long period of time. And you can see that George Soros has his Antifa family cards, and so he has Open Society foundations. He has foundations all across the world, and so he bets that the currencies are going to fall in these countries where he has insurrections occurring. And so he makes money off it. We end up paying for it. And this is sick and twisted. And so this is the middle article here is about this Naz Simeonite. So he is part of the family of Simeon in name. And he will be stabbed in the back eventually by somebody. But in the meantime, he's a warlord running downtown Seattle. And the mayor is saying, oh, it's just a block party. It's just a fun time. No, this man advocates rape and murder and other things like that, and guns. I mean, they say we don't want borders, but then they brought in blocks for borders, you know, and we don't want guns, but they brought in guns. And so Andy No is the type of guy that's out checking on this, and he's saying that this is called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. It's a new country formed in the United States. And as soon as they took over, they said, we're hungry, so bring us some vegan meat substitutes and fruits and oils and soy products, anything to help us eat. Well, you took over the country, or Seattle. You should have thought about that, okay? So he is the warlord, a self-styled leftist in the city's downtown, Raz Simone. So let's go ahead. Yeah. This is the time when the Antichrist is due soon, and we have these little bullies running around on the street, and we're all big babies right now. We're not standing up. King Saul was a big baby. He kicked out all the mediums, and then he went to a medium. So let's not be a big baby about this. And also, there are other plagues happening right now. Multiple biblical plagues are happening right now. You know, so the Dow just sunk 1,800 points as the virus cases are coming back again. Texas, Florida are seeing trends up with COVID-19. So it's not done yet, and there are more plagues coming because we're wicked. The whole world is wicked, and we're not standing up for God and what's right. We know the Bible, people. We do. So, as always, I try not to twist the Bible. I try not to give you fake prophecy. I'm trying to interpret prophecy properly, and I'm trying to give you the news and the newsmakers, and Raz is one of those guys. So the first text that I want to show you in a different light is, and they will mislead you from Matthew 24, verse 6, you will begin then to hear of wars and rumors of wars. Behold, not to be alarmed, it is necessary for this to take place, but not as yet is the end. Okay, telos in this case That would be Kate's in the Hebrew. Will rise up nation against nation. Not necessarily. Ethnos, epi, ethnos. That could be rioters. That could be nihilists. That could be, I'm arguing that you're going to have iron versus clay. You're going to have differences of opinions from the leftists versus the leftists, okay? So you're going to have Stalin and Hitler opposing each other and coming to blows against each other. Yeah, that too. Oh, yeah. It's not just nation versus nation. It's ethnos. And so that could be groups, that could be people of the same ideology. It's not, and normally Greek is pretty specific, but in this case, I think you could argue this could be mob warfare versus mob warfare as they consume each other. Snowflake versus snowflake at times, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All then are these just are the beginnings of the birth pangs. So this is the parsha that we're in right now. So it's interesting how the malcontents are taking over the Bible right now in Numbers. So it's just really, really weird how we're going to go through the malcontents of this week. Baha'alateka is the reading that we just had. And then we're going to have another reading where we send out the disciples, the 12 disciples, and 10 come back with an evil report and 2 come back with a good report. Then we go into the Simeonites, and we go into the Korah rebellion, Korach. And it's interesting that we have Naz Simone running downtown Seattle right now. So this is from Daniel Thomas Lancaster. Nice, wonderful guy, a Messianic like I am. And his comments are appropriate for what's going on in the world. And he's not speaking that way. He's just commenting on Torah, okay? So the generation of the wilderness were no worse complainers, I'm arguing covert narcissists, than any other collection of human beings. Every association of human beings seems to be vexed by the ceaseless grumbling of the members. The Torah says, now the people became like those who complain of adversity in the hearing of the Lord. So God is slow to anger usually. Complaining can incite his swift wrath. The book of Numbers contains several stories of Israel's discontent in the wilderness. In each story, the Israelites complain about something and God punishes them for complaining. My child, do not murmur because it leads to blasphemy. Neither be self-willed or evil-minded, for out of all these blasphemies are engendered. But be meek, since the meek shall inherit the earth. Be long-suffering and merciful, and genuine and gentle and good, and always trembling at the words which you have heard. Now that's from the Didache. It's not scriptural. What we believe is the disciples got together under James, Yaakov, and Paul and Peter, and started to compose what they believed. And it's kind of their belief statement to hand out to other disciples as they went out and met with people. So that's the Didache. It was written a long, long time ago, almost 2,000 years ago. It's first century-ish. Okay, grumbling about things is a telltale sign of weak faith. A person of strong faith has confidence that God is in charge and is working all things out for the good. So once again, Daniel writes for First Fruits of Zion, and I love what they write. I think they're a wonderful ministry. They're not eschatological like I am, but they are wonderful. Korah's rebellion. So once again, there's Raz, and he is a Simeonite, and Korach was swallowed into a hole. So now I'm not prophesying here, okay? I'm just saying that our reading in about 13 days is going to be about Korach rebelling against Moses, like Raz rebelling against Trump, basically, and I'm not comparing Trump to Moses, but leaders are put there for a reason. So whether you love them or hate them, even Caesar was there for a reason, whichever Caesar you're talking about, okay? But at some point in time, Korach rebelled too far, and the ground swallowed them up, and Seattle is on a fault zone. They're on the Cascadia fault zone. So let's just watch Seattle and watch the earthquakes on the 27th of June and see what happens. So here's Raz again. He's a rapper, and he says bad words, and he does bad things. And there he is talking to the police chief like best friends because they are both nihilists, okay? They're both on the same side. And the police chief doesn't want to die and really doesn't want to be fired, but eventually you have to fire her because she won't enforce the law. They're both communists. They want to take out Trump. So in some ways, this is planned. So who's your friend? Who's your foe? When the police and the mayor are on the side of the nihilists, they're nihilists, they're communists. Okay, and we've seen that from Seattle for a long period of time. So we're going to Numbers 16:1 through 18:32 and talking. This is from Chabad. And so they're saying Korach incites a mutiny. This is in 2 weeks, challenging Moses' leadership and granting of the kahuna. So that's the head. It's kahuna. It's kind of like the big Cohen, okay? Priesthood to Aaron. He is the big kahuna. He is accompanied by Moses and inveterate foes, Dathan and Abiram, and joining them are 250 distinguished members of the community who offer a sacrosanct ketoret, that's incense, to prove their worthiness for the priesthood. The earth opens up and swallows the mutineers, and fire consumes the ketoret offerers. The subsequent plague is stopped by Aaron's offering of the ketoret. Aaron's staff miraculously blossoms and brings forth almonds to prove that his designation as the big kahuna is divinely ordained. I know it doesn't necessarily work, but it sounds cool. That's a Hawaiian term. So I'm saying that there is a Cascadia fault zone in Seattle, and let's just watch it on 627 of 20. I'm not prophesying. If somebody else wants to prophesy, that's different. But okay, so I'm really not taking much of a stretch here because it is a fault zone and we're in a fault time frame. And you can see there's the ring of fire down below, and you can just see all of the earthquakes since 1900. That's basically where the big ones are. So I'm not taking much of a stretch here. Okay, so who's behind the protests? Well, there's a couple of guys. Let's start with Soros. The intentional killing of an unarmed or disarmed person by the government agents acting in their authoritative capacity pursuant to the government policy or high command. That's democide. He is actively involved in democide. So what was his history? He was a little Jewish boy that participated with the Nazis in finding Jews and having them killed and committing democide when he was a little boy 80, 90 years ago. So he is a twisted man, a very twisted man. When you turn on your own people, when you work with the Nazis, you're a sick, sick man. What he does is he watches the world burn, but he makes money off every time it burns. So if there's an insurance company that's going to lose a lot of money, he shorts the insurance company. If Target is involved in Minneapolis, St. Paul, he shorts Target stock before he sends people in to destroy Minneapolis, St. Paul. And will those businesses ever come back here? I don't know. So you're hoping for a cozy retirement? No. We're going to see snowflake anarchy and democide coming up here, where democide again is it's genocide on steroids. It's really, I don't know. It's done by sociopaths, and really you have to look for the head vampire. So I'm showing the Lost Boys over here. So democide is going to be horrific as we move forward, as we see that the government is going to will the decision of killing their own people. I know it's hard to even think that they would do that, but this is what's happened. Communists kill their own people. Evil people kill their own people. And what they always do is attack the elderly and the weak and the babies. So, abortion is one of the first things that they'll do. And then you can see the sweet little older man over there that got his head bashed in. Well, he's an older guy. He can't fight back. So they always teach how to gouge their eyes out, hurt them, scare them. They want to frighten us, okay? This is democide. This is genocide. And it's been happening for a long, long time, people. They know how to frighten us, okay? The head vampires know exactly what's going on, and there's the League of Sociopaths down in the lower right. So they always kill their own. They always do. So this is the brief history of Antifa, whatever you want to call it. It's part of a Gatestone Institute sequence. This is part number 1. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Trump is their enemy. So keep that in mind. That's my comment on top of this, and then we jump into theirs. Empirical and anecdotal evidence shows that Antifa is in fact highly networked, well-funded, and has a global presence. It has a flat organizational structure, so it's basically everybody's on the same level other than Soros and another guy, which dozens and possibly hundreds of local groups, okay? Antifa's stated long-term objective, both in America and abroad, is to establish a communist world order. In the United States, Antifa's immediate aim is to bring about the demise of the Trump administration. Absolutely, he's a statist in terms of he's not a globalist. He's a nationalist, and so he would believe in states' rights. He would believe in the federal government with reserved powers, basically the 10th Amendment, and they hate that. They want communism. They want anarchy too. The common tactic used by Antifa in the United States and Europe is to employ extreme violence and destruction of public and private property to goad the police into a reaction. They want the police to look stupid. And the poor police, they have their hands tied. They can't do anything. They can't do anything right, then they're always watched. That would prove Antifa's claim that the government is fascist. Antifa is not only officially tolerated, but is being paid by the German government to fight the war, the far right, rather. And so that's from Bettina Roll, a German journalist. Out of cowardice, its members cover their faces and keep their names secret. Antifa constantly threatens violence and attacks against politicians and police officers. It promotes senseless damage to property amounting to vast sums. So, Soren Curran wrote this article. Let's finish it out. This is his history of Antifa. The ideological origins of Antifa can be traced back to the Soviet Union. They used the same techniques roughly a century ago. In 1921-22, the Communist International, the Comintern, I don't know them at all, developed the so-called United Front tactic to unify the working masses through agitation and organization at rules for radicals at the international level and in each individual country against capitalism and fascism. They are fascists, but they're anti-fascist, but yet they're fascists. Two terms that are often used interchangeably. The world's anti-fascist group, the People's Courageous Militia, was founded in Italy in 1921 to resist and rise against Benito Mussolini's fascist party, which itself was established to prevent the possibility of the Bolshevik revolution on the Italian peninsula. Many of the group's 20,000 members, consisting of communists and anarchists, later joined the international brigades during the Spanish Civil War. That was a bloody civil war. Read Hemingway. Anti-fascism, finishing out with Soren Curran, anti-fascism has always fundamentally been anti-capitalist strategy. This is why the symbol of the whatever, it's German, never lost its inspirational power. Anti-fascism is more of a strategy than an ideology. It is a strategy, guys. It's rules for radicals. The Red Army faction, blank, 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 is a Marxist urban guerrilla group that carried out assassinations, bombings, kidnappings, aimed at bringing revolution to West Germany. And so, it's a holdover from the Nazi era. Over the course of 3 decades, the RAF murdered more than 30 people and injured over 200. That's just in Germany, guys. That's just in West Germany. The goal of their terrorist organization was to trigger an aggressive response from the government or the police, which group members believed would spark a broader revolutionary movement. The movie Die Hard was kind of like this, but they really were looking for money. But they used these monikers to be able to frighten people. So you want to make the police officer look like a pig, not a human being. And then, of course, you can shoot people. If you delegitimize them, you can do that. These are all parts of kingdoms, okay? And so there are nationalist kingdoms, there's globalist kingdoms, there's nihilists that are basically anarchists. And so my argument all the way through is that you get to the end, and Daniel 2:43 describes it this way. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So what I'm saying is these are satanic super soldiers. They are demonic, and they're not going to mix with the earth. Okay, so these are iron soldiers, and they're not going to mix with clay men. And so you're going to see this horrible fight against each other. And these are the 7 eras that we're going through: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Roman Empire, then the revived Roman Empire, which is really not the thing that we're in right now. We're getting close to that. We're seeing the process to get to that. And keep in mind also, for those of you that hate Zionists, there are no Zionists in any of these 7 empires, not a single one. Okay, and so you can see it in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, and you'll just see it. But the end is that iron doesn't mix with clay. So these super soldiers won't mix with the rest of us. So the process that they go through is from sociopath to the final Antichrist sociopath. Soros agitates, then he will hand the ball off at some point in time to the false prophet, who will try to get everyone into Chrislam, which is a merger between Christianity and Islam, into a false religion. And then at some point in time, the Antichrist has to be worshipped. And so at some point in time, we believe that this Francis is the final pope. And according to Sadhu, it's confirmed that Pope Francis is the false prophet of Revelation. But then eventually we get on to the Antichrist, and it's all sociopaths. But that's the problem right now. We're in that time frame. That's iron won't mix with clay. And this is what we're going to have happen. It's going to be a movement from here to here to here. And you're going to, what you should do is just sit back, get a nice cold lemonade, and watch the evil, fight against the evil. Don't get involved in fighting against the evil. Pray, but don't get in the mixture of it. Don't go out to the riots, people. Don't show up at all. Let the evil fight against the evil. Let them shoot each other. Okay? So this is from Natan, from the 15-year-old Jewish boy that had no religious training whatsoever, didn't know his Bible. And he's quoting above the level of the rabbis back in 2015 when he was 15. And now he's 20 years of age. So he's saying that Gog of the final Gog and Magog war is Obama. So Obama's behind this. He's involved with Soros. They're both agitating. And Obama's going to make his mark at some point in time. He's going to lead the armies against Israel at some point in time. So he's there with Soros and he's very close friends. So what you'll see from Daniel 8, and we'll describe this more in just a moment, is the Antichrist beast system will gore and destroy the false prophet's harlot system in the final showdown, and then the Antichrist will take over after that. So they're both globalists, but have different motivations. The beast wants to be worshipped, and the false prophet wants a one world religion. And right now we have the anarchists that are really believing in nothing. So we have to kind of move through, but this is specifically in Daniel 8 what we're talking about. So once again, the beast system will burn the harlot system. So Pope Francis will lead for a period of time, but then he's going to hand the ball off to the beast, which is the Antichrist. So here's the handoffs. Obama and George Soros will demoralize the faithful ones. Okay, they'll deconstruct economies, they'll implode the world, then they'll hand the ball off to Petrus Romanus, who prepares the hearts and minds for earthly Mashiach, which is the Antichrist, bringing a one world religion via miracles. He's going to have amazing talents and skills to do so. Then the Antichrist comes in, and he wants you to worship him, and he wants you to worship him and his Father as if they're one. It's going to be very much like Jesus and his Father. Okay, and so I always love peaceful protest. That's no problem. Martin Luther King was a wonderful man, but what we're seeing right now is we're going to be beat with a baseball bat unless we pledge allegiance to Obama and Soros, who cause a violent overthrow of white privilege and bring in the era of world peace. Kumbaya. Well, the problem is what we're seeing is we're pledging allegiance to nihilistic anarchy, and it's being paid for and directed against our Constitution. So the Constitution is somewhat like the Bible in terms of it's not up to the Bible's level, but it's close enough that it's a good thing for us to have laws and some kind of a rule of law, and they're against the rule of law. Okay, so once again, Soros wants to arouse the demonic hordes and the sociopaths into nihilistic wars. You're going to see covert narcissists versus covert narcissists, snowflake versus snowflake. The false prophet will unite them with clever miracles, and the Antichrist will demand worship. That's how it's going to happen. So now we're moving on to Daniel 8. So you'll see the text from the Bible. So the ram is Medo-Persia, and that's the false prophet. And you'll see the words, you'll see the end times words that'll prove that through. So this is the start of Daniel 8. After that first vision, it was in the third year of the reign of King Belteshazzar that another vision appeared to me, to Daniel. I looked into the vision, and as I looked, I found myself in Shushan, the capital in the province of Elam. I looked into the vision, and I was by the Ulai Canal. I looked up, and as I watched, there in front of me stood in a stream a ram. That's the false prophet. Also, it's Medo-Persia with two horns. Okay, so Medo-Persia. But that's also the Roman Catholic Church bringing together the Muslim Church together. And I know there are wonderful Roman Catholics out there, but the Pope's going to try to unite everybody together. The horns were long, and even good Catholic people are saying the same thing as what I'm saying. They fear that he is the false prophet because he's saying and doing. Well, he's been described as the Che Guevara of Argentina. Okay, keep that in mind, and we'll talk about Che in a minute. The horns were long, but one was longer than the other, and the longer one came up later. So that is the Muslim faith. It will come up much later, and it will be very, very powerful, much more powerful than the Catholic Church. And I saw the ram, the false prophet, pushing to the west, the north, and the south, and no animal could stand against it, nor was there anyone who could rescue from its power. So it did as it pleased and became very strong. I was beginning to understand when the Shaggy male goat, that's like saying Azazel from uh, Leviticus 16. That's the Antichrist system. Came from the west. That's where he's going to come from. Passing over the whole earth without touching the ground, the goat had a prominent horn between its eyes, one horn, a boastful horn. It approached the ram with the two horns. So this is where the goat, the Antichrist system, has to defeat the papal system, which is going to be that Chrislam, we'll call it. Okay, and I had seen standing in front of the river and charged it with savage force. I watched that as it advanced on the ram, filled with rage against it, and struck the ram, the Pope, and the Chrislam. Breaking its two horns, the ram was powerless. The Chrislam was powerless to stand against it. It threw the Chrislam to the ground and trampled it down, and there was no one who could rescue it from Azazel, the goats, Satan. It's another term for Satan. The shaggy goat, the Azazel, then became extremely strong. And so what I'm saying is that this shaggy goat is an Antichrist spirit. It is an Azazel spirit, and it will inhabit a man and a system as we get into the final 3.5 years. It will become extremely strong. But when it was strong, the big horn was broken, and in its place arose to be four horns in the directions of the four winds. At some point in time, he will come against the four winds of heaven. Out of them, and the angels too. Uh, um, we'll have a fight in the angelic community too. The good angels versus the false angels, Revelation 12. The little horn will become extremely big in the directions of the south and the east and in the direction of glory towards Israel. Continuing on in Daniel 8, it grew so great that it reached the army of heaven. It hurled some of the army in the stars, that's the fallen angels, that's once again Revelation 12, to the ground and trampled over them. Yes, it even considered itself as great as the prince of the army, Yeshua. The regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. I would argue that's just the Holy of Holies, or a tent, not a building. Through sin, the army was put in its power, along with the regular burnt offering. It flung truth to the ground as it acted and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one say to the speaker, how long will the events of the vision last? This vision concerning the regular offering and the transgressions, which is so appalling that it allows the sanctuary and the army to be trampled underfoot. The first said to me, 2,300 to 2,300 evenings and mornings, after which the sanctuary will be restored to its rightful state by the Messiah. Continuing on in Daniel 8, with a little skip, and said, I am going to explain to you what will happen at the end, Kates, of the period of fury. Period of fury is like saying tribulation, because the vision has to do with the time of the end. Okay, that is the time of the end. Va'et HaKates. And I saw a ram. That's once again the false prophet system, that's Chrislam, with two horns, which are the kings of Media and Persia, no doubt about it, but also it's about the end times, where we are. And the shaggy goat is Azazel's system, is the king of Greece, and also today, and the prominent horn between its eyes is the first king. The first of what? How many kings? And as for the horn that broke off and the four that rose in its place, four kingdoms will arise out of this nation. Yeah, it happened in Greece, no doubt about it, but not with the power of that the first king had in the latter part of their reign. That's today. When the evildoers have become as evil as possible, that's today, there will arise an arrogant king, that's the Antichrist, skilled in intrigue. So you see the system and the individual. Some more of Daniel 8. His power will be great, but not with the power of the first king, not like Alexander. He will be amazingly destructive, and he will succeed in whatever he does, and he will destroy the mighty and the holy ones. He will succeed through craftiness and deceit, and become swelled with pride, and destroy many people just when they feel the most secure. So don't get secure, people. Don't think that your home is safe. You might have to run. He will even challenge the Prince of Princes, that's Yeshua, but without human intervention, he will be broken. The vision of the evenings and mornings, which has been told, is true, but you are to keep the vision secret, because it is about the days in the distant future. Once again, the iron and the clay is not going to mix, people. And you will see these systems fight against each other. The demonic horde versus mankind, and you're going to see people fight against people. The anarchists are going to knock out Lori from Chicago, the mayor, Lori Lightfoot. They're they're going to knock her out. Okay? And then this is funny. I have to read this to you. We demand that the police be defunded. We need someone to bring us vegan and soy food because the homeless people stole our lunch. We want crust cut off our sandwiches and we want to stay up past 10 o'clock. These kids live at home with their parents and then they go out and they get paid by Soros to protest. We also declare that Trump is not our mother, so he's not the boss of me. And they look so tough, but they're not so tough. They're wearing masks. See the mask there? Okay, so once again, this is the police chief in Seattle cozying up and being friendly with Naz the Simeonite. And then you see his camp there. You're entering Free Cap Hill. Okay, whatever. Naz, Chaz, rather. And then they're also going to take out the mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, rather. They're going to take her out. And so here's her claim. Antifa's occupation of 6 blocks is just a peaceful expression of free speech and community. And then Jacob Frey, lower right, kind of middle lower right, in his walk of shame through the crowds, they weren't buying what he was selling, and so they're going to consume their own. That's how it's always been. Okay, and you'll see all of these occur. You need to start thinking about this. The Israelites, the 12 tribes, we'll call them, the Hebrews, are going to be escaping into safe zones. You need to think about your safe zone as these two fight against each other, because it's not going to be pretty. When you see the iron fighting against the clay, you need to run to a safe zone. Get out of Egypt. So you're saying, prove it to me. Well, we're going to prove it in part. Okay, so in 1933, Hitler set up the brown shirts. And so what he did was he used the brown shirts to kind of break them down, break the people. So their mission was to riot, burn, beat up, kill citizens. And they wanted to sway the elections and sway the people. If you beat them up enough, you will frighten the people, and they'll just do and say whatever you want them to do and say. And so Trump condemned the white racist groups. Obama invited them into the White House to talk. So Hitler used the brown shirts to disrupt meetings and rallies of his opponents. And so this is what MoveOn.org and BLM is doing the same thing. Okay, they're trying to stop the rule of law. Other people that did this, Che Guevara, he enjoyed killing people. I'd like to confess, I discovered that I really like killing. That's from Ernesto Che Guevara from 1957. He killed 17,000 people until he was killed. And so, you can't say that Hitler is bad and Stalin is good, but that's what they're saying. They're both evil dictators. And Che Guevara had to murder all those innocent people to free them. No. So I don't know. So Stalin on the lower right co-leads the communist revolution with you and then exiles you to Mexico and has you assassinated. It doesn't matter. They're going to pull Biden down and they're going to take him out too. Snowflakes will kill snowflakes until the Messiah arrives. The protesters will pull down the statue. This is Babylon. This is the Babylonian Bee. It's comedy, but it's funny because you're going to see that these guys get along until they don't get along. And then they're going to be strung up and it's going to be horrible. And first they're going to take out their careers, but some of these liberal leaders are going to die. It's going to be that bad. Don't walk in if you're a snowflake, don't walk in where the demons are treading. So God knows these nihilist wars are coming soon. So that's why he has the second Exodus plan for us. So he's allowing the believers the opportunity to watch them. So go get a lemonade, watch it happen, but don't be a part of it. Don't be a part of this demonic system, the iron system. Be clay, be humans, okay, and stay in love with the Father and the Son. So Pope Francis, he was known as the Che Guevara of Argentina. And even Putin knows that socialism and Marxism don't work. It's failed every single time. And President Obama and the Democrats are either idiots or deliberately trying to destroy their own economy. Putin's saying that. Huh. Okay, so here's a picture of Antifa choking a street preacher for illegally entering Chaz. Okay, so they're just the same as every other murderer. And here's Pope Francis talking, giving a speech right in front of the Che Guevara statue, his hero. So dictatorships always work for a little while. And I wanted to state also one little thing that I want to add into this is scientism, not Scientology. Scientism, we're seeing that occur too. So nihilism, scientism, you have to include scientism in on this too, which is that science is your God and you worship it, and logic and Dawkins and people like that. So there's scientism, nihilism, anarchism, communism. They want to devastate us. They want to soften us up. They want to destroy the middle class and soften up the lower and the middle classes, and then accept the next protagonist, which would be Pope Francis with Chrislam, and then the Antichrist courses belief in him and Satan. And so prove it one more time. Hitler was best buddies with Stalin when they started World War II, and then they stabbed each other, Hitler first. And so, once again, iron mixed with clay. It doesn't mix, it doesn't cleave. Hitler didn't work well with Stalin, and we should not have been mixing with Stalin at the end of World War II. We have no business mixing with a totalitarian murderer like Stalin. I mean, he loved to kill his own people. Democide again. Okay, so this is interesting because it came in 1919 after World War One, and this is from William Butler Yeats. I won't read the whole thing, but turning and turning in the widening gear, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. They saw it in World War One. We're going to see it again as we lead up to World War III. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. And so it's interesting. They knew it was going to happen. And we're only 100 years past it now, 103. So I'm arguing that this anarchy is going to be loosed on the world. Covert narcissist versus covert narcissist. Snowflake versus snowflake. And this is Greg Sheridan's comment on this, that it's liberalism that was invented basically out of Christianity. And now liberalism can survive. The question he's asking is, can liberalism survive when it severs itself from the Christian roots? Once you get that far away from the Bible and into the social gospel, can you survive? Liberalism survives for a while because the first generation or two are imbued with Christian moral concepts. But eventually you fall away from that. You don't even know what Christian moral concepts are. So your morality becomes ecologies and things like that. So eventually it goes crazy, as if demonstrably doing now what it's doing right now. The crisis of liberalism is a crisis in the heart of our civilization. It is a vacuum where there should be belief. One reason we're in danger of taking this doleful path is the decline in Christianity as the animating inspiration of public culture. You eventually, it takes a couple of generations, and here's the generations, and so you fall away from Christianity. Now, these guys are going to argue you go through generation one, which is high, and then awakening, and then the winter, and then autumn, and then you just cycle back through again. Four turnings. They just keep on turning. It ain't going to happen again, guys. Okay? Not this time. Not this turning. The nihilists will eat the nihilists until the Messiah arrives. So you can go through all the fourth turning. If you want to read it, it's very interesting. And they have been highly accurate in terms of the dates and their times. And we're in a millennial crisis right now, 2007 to 2030, basically. It doesn't matter. We aren't going to recover from this. We don't have an economy left. We don't have manufacturing left. We have nuclear weapons everywhere across the world, and we have an economy that's, $80 trillion in debt, maybe 100 trillion. I don't know. It's adding up so fast now I can't keep track. So there have been awakenings, and there have been these turnings. I don't think you're going to see it again. And so this guy on the left-hand side is saying, based on the fourth turning, that we have to have the tribulation and the Messiah returning by about 2028 because he just sees the trends going and we're going to fall apart. And, they talk about the silent generations and the baby boomers and Generation X and the millennials and Generation Z, but he just sees it falling apart too. And so I don't see it coming back. What's going to happen is the second Exodus. So this is what we're looking for. The Messiah's life births life, and the nihilist birth death. So wait for the second Exodus. You'll see signs of it at some point in time as we go from system to system, from sociopath to sociopath. And then a friend sent this to me yesterday, and I just want to mention it. Basically, the bowls are poured out at the end. And what she's arguing is that the baby's blood and the martyr's blood is poured into the bowls and then poured back out on the world, poured out of the nihilists and the Antichrist and the false prophet, but mostly the nihilists. And we must wait. And the word in the Hebrew would be pekud, which is accounting and judgment kind of together into one word, pekud. When it's full, when we have the melo hagoim, the fullness of the Gentiles, she's arguing, then at that same time you'll have the second Exodus occurring, but then you'll have the fullness of the Gentiles, and then the bowls are poured out because you have killed enough babies and killed enough martyrs. And so you're going to have ISIS part of this, nihilists, commies, covert narcissists, snowflakes, all this blood spilled, and you're going to say, well, that doesn't work. I believe that the pre-trib bride doesn't get beaten up. Well, the problem is people are getting beaten up right now. So it's not working, people. So the timing is that you have to wait and go through. And so, you know, you move from Soros to the false prophet to the Antichrist, and God must remove his bride. That is the second Exodus. It's not the rapture, people. On eagle's wings to talk sweetly the words of the Bible to her. And so that's what's going to happen. Expect the wilderness. You'll probably have to go out and sit in an old farm someplace in a tent while horrific things occur. So we are waiting for the fourth seal. We're waiting for the Antichrist to show up. We're watching iron and clay not mixing. We're waiting for the two witnesses to show up. The two witnesses probably show up just before we go into the first 3.5 years. So that would be during the time of the seventh seal, the sealing time frame. We're waiting for those bowls to pour out. Once they're full, they'll be poured out. That's Melo HaGoyim, I believe. So the directions of where things are coming from, and then also, so it's based on Zechariah 6. But then keep in mind that the seals match up with Matthew 24. And I believe we've gone through seal 3. We're waiting for seal 4. Food prices going up. You're noticing it. And there will be 4 different reasons why we have 1.94444 billion deaths at some point in time. Then we'll go into martyrdom, even worse. Then we'll go into seal 6. And then we'll go into the Great Tribulation. I want to give you a couple of verses to end it out just so you can have some happy thoughts. I called to Adonai in my distress, and he answered me. Rescue me, Adonai, from lips that tell lies, from a tongue full of deceit. What has he in store for you? Deceitful tongue, what more will he do to you? A warrior sharp arrows with red hot coals from the broom tree. How wretched I am that I'm an alien of Meshech. That's the land of Gog. That's the Gog-Magog war he's talking about. That I may live among the tents of Kedar. Those are the terrorists. I have had to live far too long with those who hate peace. I am all for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. That's Psalm 120. And then a little bit from Psalm 123. Have mercy on us, Adonai. Have mercy, for we have had our fill of contempt, more than our fill of scorn from the complacent, and the contempt from the arrogant. So that's the end. Be blessed. May you pray and find peace in this disparate time. But don't think about disparate theology. Try to figure out the Bible. I try to present that case to you, but be blessed and be very careful right now. And stay off social media if possible. Be blessed. Bye-bye.